Hey, good evening, everybody, and welcome. It's me, Mike Woodson, and I'm here today on the Hospitality Tech Show, and we are blessed, and I've been blessed to have the privilege of having a wonderful guest today. Land is Elliott. She's the co-founder and principal of Acadia Holdings, and she's a principal interview host on a show, another podcast, called It's a Personal Stories, a Hospitality podcast, formerly what we call DEI Advisors. She's the founder of what we call Athena Leadership Academy, and we're privileged to have her. She's over 25 years as a hotel real estate transaction executive, leading deals in the United States and abroad. And in 2020, she rejoined what we call Acadia Holdings, a hotel investment entity, and she co-founded in 2010, and then prior to Acacia, she held roles at a Host Hotels, Resorts, IHG, W Hotels, and KPMG. Welcome to the platform. Welcome to the show, Lan. Pleasure to have you. What a privilege. And how are you today?
I am doing great. Thank you, Mike, so much for inviting me and the rest of the team at Hospitality Tech Show to have me on. I am delighted to be on with you.
Yeah, it's a pleasure, and this industry, hospitality is evolving. The guest experience is getting a little sophisticated, and as you know, and you've been in this business, you've seen the transitions. So tell me, how did you get here? Where you're at? You're in this industry. I look at your credentials and I'm like, wow, you're a host of It's Personal Stories. You teach introduction to hotel ownerships at the university hospitality schools. You've been recognized in Hotel Management's 2025 Influential Woman in Hospitality, Lodging Magazine, Women in Lodging Issues, and you've been also named to IHI's 100 Most Inspirational Leaders in the Top 50 Social Media Influencers. How did you get here?
It is a long and winding road, Mike, but I think I would start with my love of hospitality, which came from traveling with my parents when I was young. I grew up in Singapore, and there was no road trips in Singapore. It's a very small island. And so we got to take amazing trips, and my parents didn't have a lot of money, but we splurged on vacations, and it was always a magical time for me. Mm-hmm. And when I decided to go to school, it occurred to me that I would love to be a part of that environment every day. So I went to hotel school thinking I wanted to be a luxury hotel general manager. I'm sure there are a lot of people in hospitality school that might have thought of that when they went to hotel school. And I worked 2 summers in operations and discovered that was not the be all end all for me. I loved hotels. I loved hospitality, but there was something more I wanted. And I was very lucky to take a class that was a required class in school that taught me about hotel real estate. And when I saw these beautiful pictures of hotels that had been developed or brought to life, I thought, that's what I want to do for my career. Wow. And that has really been the path I've been on since I was a sophomore in college. I won't say how long ago that was, but it was a long time. But I still love this area of hotel real estate. And you had mentioned the class that I teach, and I started teaching that class a few years ago with the hope to bring hotel real estate to many more hotel schools, because not all of them have a professor that can teach this material. And I thought, can I take 30 years of hotel real estate knowledge and contacts in that area and help schools bring this area of the industry to their students? So
that's very, very smart. And I'm sure the students love the real live experience, that you bring, that, they're not just reading about it and getting lectured. You're really bringing in that third dimension that they're yearning to really know the reality about it.
Absolutely. I think a lot of people don't realize that owners are not, the brands don't own all their hotels.
Mm-hmm.
They own very, very few of the hotels, and that presents an opportunity for students to become owners and have a real stake in the business, and can
Mm-hmm.
create wealth in that way.
Right. When you see that the franchising and owning the independent hotels, people, there's an opportunity. There's money there, investors, and you come up with, if you have the will, um, you will be able to, sell yourself, locate a hotel, a property, and you might want to renovate it. But as long as you can articulate that in your business plan, you should be okay. I met somebody in Washington, D.C. who's done it twice, at a head, and it was interesting to hear her story. So let me ask you this. I see here you started what we call, and you mentioned when we were talking after you're done, right? Um, Acacia, which is a beautiful name, Holy. Tell me about that. How did you start that academy? Tell us about that learning academy.
So, Acacia is a company that I co founded with my husband when we came back from Europe. We'd been working with Starwood, and we worked together on the W London Leicester Square deal for about 2.5 years.
Mhm.
And we actually had very complementary skills when we were working on that deal. And so during the recession, we came back from Europe. We'd been living in Brussels working for Starwood.
Mhm.
And we thought, there are no jobs. Let's start our own business. And that's what we did. We started looking at hotel deals, basically doing what I had been doing at Host, which was buying and selling hotels for 10 years. And we started on behalf of Acacia looking at hotels along with my mentor from my Host deals, who had been out
Mhm.
doing transactions for a while on his own. And we ended up growing Acacia to be invested in 5 big box hotels, about 3,800 keys, urban convention hotels that we would buy, renovate, and mostly refinance. Given the pandemic, we now have 3 large hotels, about 2,500 rooms.
Wow.
And yeah, the name Acacia actually comes from, during the pandemic, we were traveling around the world. We had never
Mm.
had the time to do that ever. And we were really inspired by the Southern Hemisphere hotels that, of course, we stayed at hotels in Australia, New Zealand, South Africa. And one of the things that we loved were the acacia trees that we saw in those
Wow.
areas of the world. And we were inspired when we started our company to name it after acacia trees.
Well, I'm impressed. I thought it was like after your daughter or something, or a girlfriend. Excuse me. Anyways, well, so tell us about the curriculum? What does that look like in the academy?
For my class,
Yes, and who are the students? That type of thing. And
yeah.
what are the teachers like in the academy?
Well, I
Tell me.
teach the class, and I
Okay.
teach it. I teach it
Excuse me.
virtually.
Uh-huh.
And the idea is that I could come up with curriculum and offer it to many schools. I could teach it virtually simultaneously across different campuses at the same time.
Mm.
And I set up the curriculum to look at the life cycle of hotel ownership, starting with how do you source a hotel to buy, working with brokers, then looking at feasibility, how do you develop numbers to determine how much you want to pay, and then other things like negotiating contracts, looking at letters of intent, developing your business plan. What are you going to do with the hotel? Are you going to keep it with the same brand? Are you going to
Mm.
change brands? Are you going to hire a management company? Are you going to manage yourself? So lots of decisions that go into crafting what your business case is for the hotel you're buying. And then we also talk about, how do you think about negotiating letters of intent
Mm.
with the management company, with your brand, with the seller of your hotel? You need to do all of that, negotiate all of that. And once you have a contract, you then need to think about doing physical due diligence on the hotels. So I have
Mm.
the students read excerpts from a property condition assessment report, which is a very typical report you would get once you're in due diligence to buy a hotel, and a phase 1 environmental report. And I say, read these chapters. These are the chapters that the owners usually read because a phase one can be 2,000 pages. And kind of show them what it is like to be an owner. And then once you end up buying the hotel, then we talk about asset management and the kinds of asset management reports that you might put together for your investors, how you're analyzing the performance of the hotel. And then finally, closing the loop at the end of your investment, exiting the investment, hiring a broker to market your hotel for sale. So that's the format of the class. And I also have a number of amazing leaders in hotel real estate that have helped me. We do interviews with each of them about what it is their role is. And on each step of the life cycle, those leaders talk about their area of expertise. So they get to learn from those leaders as well as part of the class.
So how long does the class last? I mean, how long does it go for, the curriculum?
I've evolved the class over time. Now, the way it's working is it's a flipped classroom or reverse classroom, sometimes called. There's a fair amount of homework. There's might be reading an offering memorandum. That's a document that a broker would put together to market a hotel. So we'll have the students read OMs. We'll also have them watch interviews that I mentioned, which are about an hour long. And I might have them watch some other videos as well on supply and demand or NPVs and discounted cash flows. So they'll do some of that homework in advance, come into class. I will try and do a bit of lecturing to fill in some of the gaps for the first half hour of the class. And the second half hour of the class, we do a case study based on that topic. They actually have a chance to mark up a term sheet. If they were going to bid on a hotel, it's a very typical thing you would do. You would mark up the term sheet in order to send in your bid, or review the offering memorandum and be ready to talk to your boss. If what are the pros and cons of this deal? Does it match our criteria for investing in hotels? And should we spend more time studying this hotel? So we try to get them some real life experience doing some of the activities that a junior person in hotel real estate would do. And then at the end, we get back together, talk about how their case studies went. I present the homework for the next class, and we wrap it up in a bow in an hour.
Wow. And so in terms of semesters, and does it go, what, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 3 months?
I set it up as a 10-week class, once a week for an hour. And we've done it that way because a lot of schools have semesters, but then a lot of schools also have quarters.
Right.
And I was trying to set up a format that would work for as many schools as possible.
Now, in terms of the schools itself, you partner with several universities around the globe, or is that
I have. We've had the course at a number of schools: San Diego State University, Carl Winston's wonderful hospitality program there. We continue to teach at University of Denver's Fritz Noble School of Hotel Management that David Corson leads. We've also taught it at Erin Tucker Aluwalu's class at University of Maryland Eastern Shore. I think she's a new board member for your podcast. She's wonderful, and I've done it for her class as well in the early days. And right now I'm teaching it at Tom Deutsch's Virginia Tech class.
Wow.
And this particular semester, the class is not doing it for credit. It's actually students that just want to further their learning. And we do it on a Monday evening, and they come in on their own time just to further their knowledge. And
well, that's very valuable
that.
for what you're offering. I mean, to have that information already in your pocket prior to graduation. You imagine graduating from university, you're 21 years old, 22 years old, and you know how to go out and put a pitch together to go build your own hotel or buy your own hotel. That's amazing to me. That's
Well, it is only an introduction class. Let me be super clear. It's not an entree. It's not an appetizer. It's an hors d'oeuvre. But my hope is to reach as many sophomores as possible
Mm-hmm.
to give them that spark that I had when I was a sophomore in hospitality school. And then they can go on. You could do a whole semester on feasibility and valuations. So there's much more
Wow.
to learn, but if I can spark that interest in this area of hospitality, I think it's such a wonderful place to spend your career.
Well, well, it sounds like you're doing a wonderful job. I'm going to pause for a minute for because you know what we do to the audience, just to you. We appreciate you being here. If you're on any of our YouTube live, if you're on LinkedIn, and all the other platforms, just make sure that if you have any questions, drop it in the chat. Just let us know. We have an incredible speaker, or guest. I'm going to call her a guest, and just for this what we're doing here at the hospitality show would not be possible if we didn't have these sponsors. So we want to acknowledge them: the Work Source, Montgomery County. We also Mike Birmingham, the CEO of it's I'm going to get this right this week. And Gritty Restaurant Group. I hope I have it. And Bob Falcon, the Ingredient Restaurant Group. Thank you to you as well. And those in IBM as well. Thank you. So a couple of things that came to mind when you were speaking about your students. Tell me about them a little more. Let's dive into your students. You mentioned the sophomores, and have you come across any success stories that you can look back on over the years that kind of took what you did or instilled in them, and they ran with it? Anybody stick out like that? Do you have any success stories to share?
It's interesting. I've only been teaching the class about 3 years, but as part of me first teaching the class, the very first class, I had the privilege of teaching it at University of Maryland, San Diego State, and also University of Denver. And I met a young woman who took my class the very first semester. She was a hotel real estate concentration major. Turns out they have that concentration at Denver. And she was incredible. She ended up setting up a hotel real estate club her last semester senior year, and that's how I ended up meeting her, because she had set up that club. And she went on to a great job as an analyst at HEI, and more recently has joined Blackstone in their hotel real estate group.
Oh, great place.
And she's just setting the world on fire, and I'm so impressed with what she's doing. And I don't know if I had a part in that, but I love what she's doing and hope I had a small part.
Well, look, as professors, we always look to see that, and when the student acknowledges something you said or done, I've had plenty of those in my years of teaching, and I had a recent one. Guy told me I changed his life, and it's good to see that you're adding wood to someone else's fire so they can have a huge flame. So kudos to you. That's great. So let's take a look at this. How about AI, artificial intelligence? You and I, before we had this discussion, so you had some areas that how do you think it's changing now? You've had this course for 3 years. As you know, we're coming up on the anniversary of ChatGPT. And it's as we come up on November 22nd, you say to yourself, it's already taken hold in the academia world and teaching. How do you see it from your lens? How has it changed things? What do you think?
I'm starting to hear from the schools. Obviously, AI is in the schools, and the students are using it. And I was recently at a board meeting for the hospitality school at University of Denver, which have the privilege of being on their advisory board. And it's really interesting that the professors are really talking about, how do we think about AI? How is this going to change the way we teach? What should we be teaching students? And I've heard some things out in the industry, like they're not hiring 6 analysts anymore. They're hiring 1 because they're using AI. So it's really interesting as you start teaching students who, for example, want to go into real estate, the area that I work in. what should you be teaching them? Because there are, like most places, there are some mundane things that need to happen in order to do the basic analysis. You know, back in the day, you had to get all the historical numbers, you had to load it into a spreadsheet. And before you could do a pro forma to project out what the hotel might do in the future, so you could determine what to pay for it. But there are a lot of things that go into even something as simple as taking historical data and putting it into a spreadsheet. Is sometimes you have data that comes in that are in different line items. You know, there are some line items in a hotel P&L that could go in one place or it could go in another, or the uniform systems of accounts that determines where things should be put has evolved over time. So what if you were putting numbers next to each other, but they're not really apples to apples because things have changed? And what used to be appropriate, you know, in 2010 and 2011, it's different, or pick a more recent decade. And I think the practice of going through that exercise is really useful to really understand the underlying numbers. And yet I think that is one of the more mundane things that AI can take and instead just go ahead and drop the numbers in. But if you've never had to reconcile numbers being really different and different underlying data, you're not going to know, oh, this isn't a trend of something. This is actually just the data not matching up correctly. And I'm looking at not a historical trend, but something that's just been rearranged. So I do think there is this piece of being in the weeds of doing the analysis, even the mundane analysis, that is instructive, especially at the beginning of your career. And one of the things I haven't found anyone to give me a good answer on yet is if you hire fewer people because you're using AI to do the mundane tasks and AI is going to spit out the answer. The question is, how do you train the people to know when AI is wrong? And then how do those people move up in the industry? And if there are fewer people being trained how to properly look at a hotel deal because there are less analysts, for example, because of AI, we always need a lot of owners. So how do you get owners trained in the right way to learn how to look at a deal, to learn to look at the nuances and have experience along the way of the pitfalls that you might not think of, but you learn through hard experience? How do you do that in a way so that you have more successful owners? And if AI is doing a lot of that learning, how are you going to know when AI is wrong? You know, if it's right 90% of the time, it's going to get better. It's going to get, you know, better and better over time. But you don't want to be the person making an investment because of something that was wrong and AI didn't pick that up and you didn't know well enough to say, hey, that looks wrong. Let's dig into it some more.
Well, in the beginning, we have, prompt engineers, and now we have to have what we call prompt analysts, right? To be able to, who are actually in the trenches. I don't think AI is going to replace the human element. I don't think we're going to ever be there. There has to be that eyes on glass, that eyes on the technology. Is this right? When you look at some of the disclaimers of AI, it tells you that it can, whether it be Claude, whether it be, ChatGPT or any other AI, generative AI solution. And even when you look at, Copilot, it's often, there's a flaw. And so, like anything, it's not perfect. It has its purpose, but is it 100%? No, it's not. So you're right. We will not be able to forever have a person. And these managers, who think I'm going to totally eliminate a workforce, I think they're going to be recalling those people back. I really do.
How do you become a manager if you don't know how to review other people's work because you've never done the work?
Which is true. That's a factor. So it's interesting to see. So I have a question for you in terms of accounting. You're dealing with a lot of cases. But what about now the change of technology? from on-prem, capitalizing, being able to purchase hardware, and now we're going to the service industry, software as a service, things like that, applications. So OpEx versus CapEx. What's your take on that in that world of hoteling? How do you take that in terms of how people deal with that when financing and investing?
Well, I can
Because
tell you as a hotel owner, we're not the most tech people, right? I think a lot of people have said the hotel industry is at least 5 years behind other industries. And I think part of that is the way our industry is set up, because you might have employees who are, working in the hotel using the technology, but then you've got the management company who needs to go to the ownership and convince the owners of what tech is needed. And we work with right now two major brands, Hyatt, Regency, and Marriott. But whatever brand you're working with, if they're or third party manager that you're working with, inevitably you get a capex schedule of the needs of the hotel for the next year, and there is always IT that's on there. And every year it's like, well, we're buying new XYZ and it's going to cost, I don't know, we have big hotels, $100,000, $200,000, but it's a one-time charge because once we buy these new XYZs, we'll be fine. And so you approve it and you move on. And the next year, they're not buying new XYZs, they're buying new ABCs. And then you have another big charge that's a couple $100,000. And you think, well, we just bought all new stuff. And they said, well, that was other new stuff. Now we have different new stuff we need to buy. And so it has felt for many years that there is this ongoing death by 1,000 cuts of new technology that you're always buying. And I think because there is no strategic overarching plan that we understand, it's just an evolving plan every year. It just feels like a never ending cycle of buying new stuff, which is the stuff that owners don't understand, right? We're not technology people. Yeah.
Well, in terms of, you're right, but it is about the guest experience, right?
Well, let's talk about guest experience, because we collect a lot of data on our guests. The industry does. And yet, I haven't checked into a room yet that has that foam pillow that I told them I wanted. And the question is, we have tons of guest data. And when do we actually see that guest data being used? And if it's to make the guest experience better, I don't know. I don't know if I'm always getting the room with the criteria that I told you I wanted. I don't mind sharing it, but then I scratch my head and say, why'd I get this room? It doesn't meet any of that criteria. And why don't I have the things I thought I told you? I'm part of your program. Why is that not in my hotel? I thought I would put that into my member profile in my frequent guest program, and yet it never shows up in my room when I check into one of your hotels. So I think the idea is fabulous, which is let's collect data so that we can better meet our guest needs. But do we just have tons of guest data that nobody is using?
We have a lot of data, and I don't think we are extracting the information. It's nice to have a data lake. You just throw stuff in there, but are you really extracting it and looking for the right information so it matches up with Mrs. Jones, who is a frequent traveler of your hotel, and she wants to make sure, I told you many times in my surveys, I like to have a room down the hall, away from the elevator, blah, 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 on the 42nd floor of your building, right? Those are the types of things that make a guest happy. Oh, they actually listen to me. And if you talk about loyalty, the loyalty concept, you want a repeat customer, and you want them to also be your ambassador, you may want to start. It's the little things that count. Right. So we have a question from our viewers, and this question is the viewers are asking, what are the financial hurdles involved in developing or acquiring a property?
There are a lot of financial hurdles, I'll be honest with you. Hotels are notoriously, well, any kind of real estate is notoriously capital intensive. It means it requires a lot of money to do that. There are a few
Oh,
different ways that people have started raising money in order to invest in hotels. One that a lot of the owner operators have used is to pull together their money along with friends and family money. And they get that money and they will go buy a hotel, and they might have family members work in that hotel, and they do everything at that hotel. It's completely
mm,
owned and operated. And as they make a bit more money, they might go buy a second hotel,
mm,
and from there on. And I think people have been extraordinarily successful doing this. You look at, for example, the AHOA community, who have a lot of people who started friends and family and have created really wonderful businesses. I think of Mitch Patel at Vision Hospitality Group, and what a high quality, incredible group of people and hoteliers on that team. And they built that up. I believe it was Mitch's father that started the company, and he has carried it on and taken it to, ever more new heights. But it is hard to find money for the first hotel. Another friend of mine who's doing great things is Davon Reeves, who I adore. She started out working in hotels and wanted to become a hotel owner, and has done a lot of work towards that. She owns a number of hotels now, but she found it was really difficult to
mm,
raise capital. And one of the things she did was she started a crowdfunding platform called Vestor.com, where individual people can go on and invest in a piece of a hotel, that someone will go on Vestor to try and raise money for a hotel they want to buy. And that's another way to start investing if you don't have a lot of capital, but also for someone who has expertise and wants to go start buying a hotel, it's also a way to start raising money.
interesting. I mean, that's, and I hope to that viewer that asked that question, I hope that answers that. Feel free again. Those we are live on 3 platforms. We're on YouTube, Instagram, and LinkedIn. So if you have a question, drop it in the chat. And before I go, I was kind of did not acknowledge, but want to make sure that I kind of recognize an individual. He's been a part of this show since the beginning. And I really want to take the time to acknowledge Danny Burnett. He's vice president of IBM. So thank you to him. This all would not be possible from the beginning. He was one of our first sponsors. And so myself and together with my co-host, Sanan, and co-founder, we are very grateful to him. All right, so we kind of got through midway through our interview. So tell me this. Here we are. We're in 2025. Technology is taking hold. And I know you said, I don't talk about technology, but you do talk about strategy. And so, we know where we've been in the hotel industry. We know what the pandemic has taught us. But now we have a new challenge. We have a new generation called the Gen Zs. They look at things in a different perspective. Can you kind of elaborate where do you see this, the impact of this? Because these Gen Zs are the hotel owners of tomorrow, right? And they will look at things differently from how they came up. What's your thoughts on that?
My first thought is there are a lot of misinformation about this generation. And I think when I look at the students that they have, they are incredible and brilliant. And
Mm,
I throw things at them in class and they get it. They go, this is hard, but they got it right. And they continue to do really well. And I think there is so many generalizations about this generation, and they have, like every generation, brilliant people, motivated people, people who are self-starters. My class at Virginia Tech this semester is not for credit. These students are taking a class just to further their knowledge because of an interest in hotel ownership. And I applaud that, because how many people would have done that in other generations if there was no credit in it, just for knowledge sake? And I think there are lots of really smart people, and I am not worried at all. I think that they are going to figure it out, and they're going to figure out new ways of doing things, new ways of getting to the same place, maybe more efficiently. And so I applaud the effort to look at things differently. I'll give you an example. One of the women that I work with on a volunteer project, and we're working on the Women in Hospitality Leadership Alliance, their podium committee, to track how much diversity is there at industry conferences. Now, the amount of work to go through each conferences, and we're looking at the 4 big ones to start in the US, the investment conferences, to pull everybody's name, title, company, and be able to track, is this a woman? Is this a man? Is this a person of color? And how do we think about diversity on the panels and tracking all of that? That's a ton of work to do. But this young woman has co-opted her boyfriend, who happens to work in AI. So I am very grateful to both of them, Tori and Patrick, to use AI to scrape data to make it more efficient to do this work. And I think that's what we're going to see more of. We're going to see, let's figure out what to do. But this generation needs to know the why. And I actually think, doesn't every generation want to know the why behind what they're doing? But I think if you can be open to explaining what is the issue, what are we trying to solve, you might have one way of solving it, but you know what? They're going to come up with some unbelievable new ways of doing it. And let's be open to new ways. Maybe they will be better. Maybe it's the combination of the old ways and the new ways that is the best. So I'm excited for what Gen Z is going to bring and how they're going to think about our industry and the new things that will happen because they're in it.
Right. And the innovation, the creativity that they bring, kind of thinking outside the box, you say.
Well, they don't have the same paradigms that we have. So,
yeah.
So my thought is, bring it on. Let's look at things in a new way, and let's see. I do think I learned something from Chip Conley, the founder of Modern Elder Academy, and he's also the founder of Joie de Vivre Hotels. He talks about that knowledge is in your phone and wisdom is in your gut. And there are things that you can learn from searching them on your phone or figuring things out, but there's always going to be that human element of knowing, is that actually right? Is that really correct? I saw a cartoon of a AI generated image of an eggplant, and it was a plant that had eggs hanging and big leaves. And I thought, you know what? That's actually correct, but it's not correct. And I think the other analogy he gave me is that knowledge is knowing that a tomato is technically a fruit, but wisdom is knowing not to put it in a fruit salad. And so I think there's so much that intergenerational, we can be so much more powerful if we lean into each other's strengths, and things don't have to be the way they were. Let's open up everything. Let's talk about it. Maybe it still needs to be the way it was, but maybe we'll come up with some new things by being open to the paradigm shift that the younger generations can bring.
Yeah, they tend to think outside of the box. I mean, entrepreneurship, really, own it. Kind of like, why does it have to be this way? It could be this way. And you're right about the dynamics of it. Let me ask you this: when you were at your castle, Cassell was it Castell College, right? Is it Castell? Right. And you
Yes.
started what we call the Women in Hospitality Leadership Alliance. Is that still going today?
So, a Castell project was an initiative by Peggy Berg. And through my work with Peggy on her Castell at College initiative, I got to know a lot of schools. But what
Mhm.
was really remarkable was Peggy brought me to the first meeting of the Women in Hospitality Leadership Alliance, which Rachel Humphrey started a few years ago. And
Mhm.
Rachel had this incredible idea to connect the various organizations that are focused on advancing women in hospitality leadership. And today, the Alliance is, I believe, 33 different organizations. And the Alliance serves as a way to connect these different organizations that are around the world. They're not just in the US, they're in Europe, they're in other parts of the world. And we all have the same goal of advancing women in hospitality leadership. And the idea is that we're stronger together. And the Alliance serves to
I like that.
amplify the messages of each of the 33 organizations.
And that's continues today.
It does. It
Wow.
does. We've been doing some fun things at the Alliance. I mentioned tracking diversity on industry stages. That is
Mhm.
part of the podium committee effort of the Alliance, which is led by Rachel Vandenberg, who founded the Accelerate program.
Mhm.
And one of the things we decided when we started talking to conference organizers about how can we get more women on the stage, the first thing they always say, well, there are no women. And I have a belief
Wow.
that the women know the women. If you want to find more women, go ask a woman. She's going to know the other women in this area. And we decided to start a speaker directory of
Mhm.
women in the hotel industry. And we started with basically the contact lists of a handful of people. We put it together. We launched with 700 women last summer, and now we are over 1,700 women at all levels in all areas of the industry and around the world. And it is incredible to see all these women, and we hope it will be a great resource. And we're already
Mhm.
starting to see it be a great resource for conference organizers, podcast hosts, and people looking for more diverse boards, and also executive recruiters looking for more diverse slates of candidates. And hopefully, the speaker directory will be the reason that no one can ever say again there are no women in any
Mm.
particular area of the industry. So it was a wonderful way to show the power of the Alliance, because we had people from different organizations come together and put together the speaker directory. I had in my mind that it would be an Excel spreadsheet,
Mhm.
and Rita Varga from Rise Up in Germany said, this very, very easily become a website. And it has
Wow.
since become a website. And we worked collaboratively across a number of different organizations to make that happen. So I think it's wonderful to be able to leverage different people's strengths in
Mhm.
order to further our common objective.
Well, let me ask you this then. In terms of your ownership, have you seen the progress, explode with ownership of women-owned hotels throughout the world? Has that exploded? I mean, you said
Yeah.
they weren't on the stage, but I mean, has that changed?
There are women who are in hotel
Mm.
ownership. They are out there. They are starting businesses. I mentioned Davon. There are also women like Tracy Prigmore, who I am a huge fan of, who started She Has a Deal, which is one of the components of She Has a Deal is not only teaching women how to become hotel owners, but it culminates in a pitch competition where you are pitching live to industry leaders of your deal. And you win actually money to help towards your investment of your new deal. And so she has started that platform and owns a number of hotels and has helped support women who have come through She Has a Deal to buy their first hotels. There's also other incredible women who have started companies that own hotels, like Heather Turner with Tamarack Capital Partners. She has an amazing platform. She's the CEO and owns a number of hotels. She's amazing. I also think of Maki Barra. She and Rob Klein started Charters, which has been going for over 10 years. They are prolific investors in the hotel industry. So there are definitely some women out there that are doing deals, but I'd love to see more. It remains a tough thing to raise capital if you're going to do bigger hotels, if you want private equity money, if you want to get a loan from a bank. It's still challenging. Women are doing it, and the women I named have been successful doing it, but we'd love to see more women and more opportunities for everyone.
Do you see the uptick rapidly, or is it still going slow? Is it a rapid expansion from your lens?
Yeah, from my lens, it's funny. I've been attending these investment conferences since the mid '90s.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be there. There'd be 2,000 people, and there would be maybe 20 women. Now
Wow.
we're more like 20% women. So it's getting better. There are more women in this area of the industry. I think where we could see more is at senior levels. So if you look at chief development officers and chief investment officers at companies, it's the last time that AHLA Foundation published information, I think it was 2023 data. It was 26.5 men for every woman that was in that CDO, CIO role. So quite a big disparity. In fact, if you compare for the same period of time, that study found that at the CEO level, there were 16 men for every woman that was in hospitality at that level. And so even more challenging to be on the investment side as a woman in leadership. So I do see many more women that are coming up. There are a lot of women at the more junior levels. And even if you go one step down, the SVPs and the VPs, you are seeing more and more women out there. And I think part of what I would love from teaching my intro to hotel ownership class is to get many more people interested in this area of the industry and widen the funnel so we can have more people be in this area of the industry and eventually move to senior leadership, C-suite, and heading up companies in this area.
Yeah, good. Well, in terms of growth, though, with women only, there's more independent hotels like yourself come on, more hotel groups. And people kind of stick to the main. They just know the IHGs, the Hiltons, etc. But there's a lot. I mean, look at your organization, and you own a variety of. You own a Hyatt, you own a Marriott, and the diversification behind that. Is there an effort to kind of push that to educate the women that hey, it's not just that. There's a whole. You could own 3 of those. I mean, and I know you talk about from the Academy of Investment, but really, introduction or awareness, and what does that look like in the alliance and the organization that you talk about?
Well, I can speak in my class. We definitely talk about the different ways that you can brand your hotel, right? You can have the hard brands, which is what we have at Acacia. You can have soft brands where it looks like an independent. I was just this week staying at a fabulous hotel in San Francisco called the J, which is part of Marriott's Autograph collection. And that's a soft brand. It's part of Marriott Bonvoy's system, but it is, for all intents and purposes, you don't see the Marriott sign anywhere. It's called the J. And then there are completely independent hotels out there that are not affiliated with any of the big brands. That is definitely an option, and I see a lot of interest in that. My
Hmm.
only caution is if you're new to the hotel investment arena, it is much harder if you don't have a ton of experience to talk an investor or a lender into an independent hotel. They are going to feel more comfortable if you've got a big brand behind you, a giant reservation system
Mm-hmm.
pushing guests into your hotel and providing a platform for you to generate eyeballs on your hotel. And so I know a lot of people love the independent hotels. And there was definitely a moment, there was the hard brands and the independent hotels. And I think the large brand families have figured it out by these collection brands, these soft brands that
Mm-hmm.
allow, in some ways, the best of both worlds. So.
Interesting. So, with that said, a lot of them, and the change and to be competitive and what the guest experience and bringing in technology, and I would be wrong if I didn't have to ask you a technology question. Okay, robots. What's your take on the robots coming into the hotel? What's your take on that?
I think if they can help, we have a labor issue in our industry.
Mm,
I honestly, I think as an industry, we haven't done a great job collectively of telling the world why this is an amazing career to be in. And that there are many, many jobs in our industry. It's not just hourly work in hotels. There are amazing careers. And I think we do have a labor issue, and I think with the current immigration policies, it has
mm,
exacerbated the issue. The pandemic didn't help us as an industry,
mm,
and I think if there are other ways that we can supplement what humans are doing, why not help with some of the more difficult things like, do we need to have housemen that bring the heavy linens and towels up to floors? Maybe that's something that a machine can do, that a robot can do. And there are definitely people out there working on robots that could be fun. I've heard, I haven't seen it yet, that there are cities where there are robots delivering food to people's homes and they're
mm-hmm.
going down the street. I saw my first Waymo recently. I'm not quite ready to get into a driverless car, but
Yeah.
they are definitely out there. And I have friends who have used it and said it was great. So I do think we are going to find ways to integrate it. And I think robotics is getting so much better over
Mm-hmm.
time. I think it goes back to our conversation before, right? That there are definitely a lot of things that computers and technology can do well, but I do think there is still going to be a human element
Mm-hmm.
to everything we do, especially in our industry, because it's about hospitality.
Well, let's take it to So you talk about a labor problem or shortage, impact of immigration policy and etc. on our industry, on the hospitality industry. But what about the unsung heroes? I think that hotels should embrace the individuals who make up the room. One of the things I purposely do and go out of my way, the person that might be vacuuming, the guy at the door, the maintenance man. All right, I kind of just acknowledge them and tell them thank you. And I sometimes I don't think that they get their just due. What's your feeling on that? Just it's just they're there. But sometimes I don't think our guests realize the value that they bring to their experience. I'm going to stop there.
I agree with you. I think again, this is the thing that humans can do really, really well. Looking someone in the eye and saying thank you for what you do. You could do
Mm,
that anywhere. You could do that to the server at your local restaurant. We did it the other day at TSA as we went through
mm-hmm.
security. And just looking the TSA agent in the eye and saying, thank you for being here. It's a
Right.
government shutdown. You haven't been paid. You didn't get your last paycheck. Thank you for being here
Hmm.
and allowing us to go on our trip. But I think it's the same thing applies to hotels. This is the thing that humans can do really well, just to look people in the eye and say thank you and I appreciate you. It
Right.
doesn't cost anything. And I think just smiling and making a connection with someone can be so important.
It makes a difference. It makes it. I did the same while traveling recently to Dallas, and I just looked them right in the eye. I just said, "I really want to thank you. Thank." I mean, I never said that to the person who I had to raise my hand while the scanner come down. Thank you for being here. That was a great experience. So, yeah. So let me ask you this though. So here we are, 2025. The times are changing. Hotels are kind of diversified. But I want to ask your opinion on this concept: the the room that caters to you. And we talked a little bit about that when, I like my room to be this and the customized experience. So if I was to open the door and the same thing, welcome, Michael, to Mr. Woodson to your hotel room. Right? I've made, I mean, really a soft tone that I've made every effort to ensure that you have the best experience. Right? Yeah. And as you suggested, your bottle of wine awaits you. Welcome. But what would you feel if that happened and you opened your door as you were walking to put your luggage and or go into into the area? Tell me, what do you think about that concept?
I've actually had that experience.
Wow.
Do you want to know where? It
Yes,
was
I
at the
do.
Star Wars Hotel at Disney.
Really? Wow.
Star Wars Hotel at Disney, which is no more sadly, but when you check in, there is a video screen in your room where a robot welcomes you to the hotel, asks if you need anything, lets you know how to ask for something different, and interacts with you. It was a little weird at first, but then it was
Mm,
wonderful. And
wow.
I thought, I really like it. I'm also that person that loves the Hilton app when you check into a hotel because the airlines have trained me. I just want to get my boarding pass, go through security, and go straight to my gate. I don't need to talk to anybody. And
Mm.
the Hilton app lets you select your hotel room, your exact room number that you want. It shows you a map and it says if you want the king room, you could be on the third floor. If you want the double queen at your rate that you've selected, you can be on the fifth floor. You go through, you select your room and check in, and you go from the front door of
Wow.
the hotel to your guest room. Use your phone to go in the room, and that's your room that you selected.
I'm
And
impressed. I got to
and
try that
it's
out.
wonderful.
Well, we got about 3 minutes left. And so, it has been a pleasure having this conversation with you. I just can't stress enough. When I read your bio in the beginning, I said to myself, what a fascinating lady, but the perspective that you bring to students in the classroom are just, invaluable, priceless. And as you have said, students show up on your own. You have a generation. The women are expanding and exploding. More women are attending and getting involved and coming on the stage. And becoming those CEOs and leading the pack, and rightfully so. We have a diversification taking place as, people of color from a wide population also having the opportunities to come to the table. Um, the curriculum that you develop augments that a lot of universities, just students are just, probably in awe for what they have and your experience. So it's been great having you here. Um, just want to thank our sponsors, just by thanking you, of course. But Danny Barnett, IBM, the folks at the Integrity Group, I want to thank you as well. And absolutely want to thank our audience for being here. Once again, this is the Hospitality Show. We've had our guest, Dr. Lan Elliott, and she's the co-founder and principal of Acadia Holding. Join us next. This has been episode 23. Wow, we've come a long way. So it's been a pleasure having you here. Thank you once again, Lan, and good night to all of you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. It was an honor to be here with you and the live audience. Appreciate your time.
All right, fantastic. Good night, all.